kind of people do we want to be? Hi, I'm David. This is March 4th, and we're on week 58. I'm glad you joined me. This week in the Bible, we've covered the end of Esther in the Old Testament. We've covered the first 6 chapters of Job in the Old Testament, and we've also looked at Acts chapter 7. And I just want to point out 3 or 4 specific people in those readings that there's things that I really want to be true in my life, and I believe that the Lord wants them to be true in all of his children's lives. The first character I'd like to start with is Job. You know, this book was written somewhere between 2000 and 1000 BC. That's a long time ago. But the character that's described here, Job, described by the Lord in the beginning as a man that was blameless and upright in all of his ways, that on earth there was no one like him. And even though he went through some horrible things, losing his children and his livestock and his wealth and even his own body being broken with disease and friends there to accuse and curse, he made it through that trial better off at the end than he did at the beginning. And there's a thread of intercession there at the end. His friends were healed because of his prayers after that whole mess was done. So one of the things I'd be praying for right now is that, God, I want to be like Job. Not the suffering. Nobody wants to go through suffering and trials. But I want to be like Job in the sense that when I go through my trials, I come out better the other side because I have the Lord and I've done what the Lord expected I was going to do. Now, if we move ahead in time about 1,500 years, somewhere in the neighborhood of 460 BC to 330 BC, somewhere in there, we look at the 2 characters of Esther and Mordecai. Both of these people lived a life of intercession. But specifically, we were looking at the end of Esther this week, and it was chapters 9 and 10. And when you look at what those 2 accomplished for their nation and the protecting of their people, and the authority and the power and the position and preeminence that they were given, it can't be denied that there are sometimes God puts his people in powerful positions, and when he does, he expects powerful response to that authority that's been given to them. So one of the things I'll be praying about Mordecai in particular is that I would bear the favor of God the same way that Mordecai did. And if you look at the very end of that account of Esther, it says that he worked for the good of his people, speaking up for the welfare of the Jews. And his favor and preeminence had increased to a point where he was only second in the land to the leader of the land himself. Not that that's something that we desire, but I'll tell you what, if you end up there, a lot is required of you. And so I just want to pray that, God, I want to be like that. If I end up in a position of power or authority for some reason, God sees fit to put me there, that I'm a man that looks out for the good of his people and always looks out for the good of Israel. Then we fast forward about another 600 years, and now we're in AD 70, sometime just prior to AD 70. You have Stephen. You know, Jesus Christ has been crucified, he's been resurrected, he ascended, he went to heaven, and now you have Stephen who's out there, and this is some of the things that are described of him in Acts chapter 7. Actually 6 chapter 6 verse 8. Full of God's grace and power, he performed amazing miracles and signs among the people. In chapter 7, you find him preaching the gospel fearlessly to an angry mob. And actually in verse 755, it says he was full of the Holy Spirit and gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God. And he saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God the Father, and he declared it. And this so incited the mob that they stoned him to death. But as he was dying, he looked into heaven and he said, Father, don't charge them with this sin. Something very similar to what Jesus said, and it may even been exactly what Jesus said. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. That's the kind of man I want to be as a man of God on this earth, to do the will of God, being full of the Holy Spirit, being full of the power and the grace of God, doing his work. And if I should happen to die that way, I want to be dying asking for the forgiveness of those who are doing the deed. Those are lives worth imitating. And those are things we can walk away from today. Brothers and sisters, I love you. I hope we're going to be able to meet again soon. I believe it. And when we do, it's going to be a sweet reunion. God bless you.